In this video, we're going to look at managing the activity lifecycle. And let's go ahead and start by going to developer.android.com. And under the drop-down for developers, training, managing the activity lifecycle. And then let's go to the first page, starting an activity. So most of the information you want is in this graphic, and it's repeated a couple of times throughout the tutorial. But this really lays out the different states that your Android device can be in, and then methods that are called when the operating system wants to transition your device from one state to another. And for each of these methods, there's a default implementation that lives on the parent class activity. And you can override any of these methods inside of your app if you want to get custom behavior for any of these particular transitions. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and create a new Android project. And I'm going to put it in my Android projects folder. And I'm going to call it Lifecycle. And we'll call the set the application name to Lifecycle as well. And next, standard API level 10 and up. Take a blank activity to start with. Leave the standard main activity. And then we'll let Gradle do its thing. Okay, so that was pretty quick. Let's go ahead and go to the Java file here. And so when you create a new blank activity in Android Studio, some of the methods are filled in already. And then once again, you can supply override methods for the standard ones if you want to have custom behavior in your app. What I'm going to do is I'm going to implement custom versions of all of these standard methods. And I'm just going to start by having them write a line to the log file saying what's being executed. So let me create a log tag. And I'm just going to list the name of my activity. And then for each of the existing methods, I'm going to add a line that says log.d log tag, and then just the name of the method that's being called. So call create for that one. Alt plus enter to resolve log. And then one for onCreate options menu. And one for on options item selected. And that's it for the starter set. So let's go ahead and run this. I have a Genymotion running. Okay, and we'll run on Genymotion. And so our app is running. We have some stuff in the console. So let me go ahead and clear out everything that's in the console. And I'm going to make this a little bigger. And I'm going to exit out of this. And let's start it again. And we see that we get some stuff logged to the console. So under main activity called onCreate, main activity called onCreate options menu. And if I go to the home, I don't get anything logged. If I restart, I don't get anything logged. And if I kick out, I don't get anything logged. But now that it's dead, destroyed, if I start it again, it calls onCreate again and onCreate options menu again. So right now I don't have very many methods implemented. So let's go ahead and add a few more. Let me show you also this filter is pretty useful too. I can just limit it to the things that include main activity from this app. This drop down I can select no filters, or I can select a particular app to filter on, and then here I can look for particular text. So let's go ahead and make this a little smaller again and start implementing these methods. So all of the main methods on this diagram all return void, and none of them take any arguments. So we already have an onCreate. Let's implement onStart. So that's going to look like this. Public void onStart, no parameters. And we're going to log that we called onStart. And then, very important that you always remember to call super dot on start in each of your overrides, because the operating system, the apps, handle a lot of stuff in these methods by default. And if you don't call these, you will get errors. So go ahead and implement that. And then I'm going to implement the next method, which is on resume, and that's going to write a different message to the log and also call a different super method. And let me just point out these overrides. These overrides are basically optional, but good idea to put them in anyhow. So when you're overriding an abstract method on a parent class, oh, I misspelled resume. See, this helped me because I was trying to override something that didn't exist, and I get a curly. So that's why you should include override. Now let's go ahead and do the next one. So we did on start, on resume, on pause, and then on stop, on destroy. So let's do those three. So I'm going to copy that and just paste in three more. On pause, on resume, on destroy. Sorry, on pause, on stop, on destroy. So on pause. We'll go back and fix the rest of it in a sec. On stop, on destroy, do pause, stop, and destroy. Okay, now we have a couple more. Try that again. So now we have all of these. We need on restart as well and on resume. So let's do those. Paste in two more copies. On restart and on resume. Oh, I already have on resume, so what was I actually supposed to do there? On restart. On restart. Oh, and on resume is called in both places. So we already have this from the top, so we don't need on resume again, but we do need on restart. So let's get rid of this one. And call on restart. And on restart. And I haven't fixed all the super methods yet, so let me do those. So on start, on resume, on pause, on stop, on destroy, and on restart is good. Alright, so I think that's all of them. Let's go ahead and run our app now. we still have the same filter here. Okay, let me make this a little smaller. Let's scroll over. So when we started the app, let's clear this again, and we'll exit out, clear it again, and now when we run it, we get on create, and then on start, on resume, and then on create options menu. So if we look at the graph, we got on create, on start, on resume. So now we're in resumed and the app is visible on the top. And then it also called on create options menu. So now if we go to home, we logged on pause and on stop. So on pause, on stop. So now we're stopped, hidden, but we're not destroyed. So if we launch the app again, it will restart this by calling on restart, on start, then I'll be started, then it will call on resume, and then I'll be resumed and visible. So let's go ahead and do that. And what we got was on restart, on start, on resume, and now our app is running. So go ahead and play with that a little bit. Let's go ahead and kill it entirely, so back out of it. And now what we get is we were on resume before, we got on pause, on stop, and on destroy. So on pause, on stop, on destroy. So the only one we haven't looked at is resume pause and then pause resume. So let's go ahead and implement a resume button. And this is going to show us a couple of neat things along the way. So I'm going to right click on here and create a new activity, blank activity, and I'm going to call this pause activity. And I'm not going to make any other changes for now. And instead of inheriting from action bar activity, I don't want an action bar on this one. So I'm just going to inherit from activity. And then I have to hit Alt plus Enter to import that. And then under the manifest, I'm going to change the theme of this. So this activity, I'm going to add a theme. And the theme is going to be one of the dialogue themes. So I'm just going to type dialogue. And I want AppCompat Light Dialogue. And this is going to do something really cool. So before I show you, let's go ahead and look at the XML. Let's change this to a linear layout. With vertical orientation. And we'll add a button. Wrap content, and we'll put text on there. It says OK. And let's change the title here, and instead of calling it Hello World, let's call it Pause. And we'll add a string resource for pause. It just says pause. Okay. So let's see what it looks like now. Actually, we haven't hooked it up yet, so it'll do the same thing. So let's just cancel that. All right, so now what I want to do is add an action button. When you press it, it launches this pause activity. So let's get an action button drawable. And I'm going to look for a pause icon. And let's go for the images here. Let's see what we have. So I have a black action bar, so I really want white against black. So this is 512 by 512, which is a little on the large side, but okay, so that looks fine. Okay, so now this went to my downloads folder. So let me show it in downloads. I'm going to cut that, go to my Android projects folder, Lifecycle, app, source, main, resources, drawable, and I'm going to paste it in, and then I'm going to rename it just pause.png. Okay, so now I have a pause button. Let's go ahead and hook it in to our action bar. So under the menu, we have menu main.xml, and I'm going to create a new item. And we'll call this action pause, and we'll give it a title @string / pause, and app : show as action equal if room. Okay, so now we have a button in our activity bar, and then let's go to our main and hook that button up. So if the ID is equal to r.id.pause, action pause, then we want to create a new intent, and our intent is to launch the pause activity. All plus enter to resolve, and then we're just going to start activity intent. Okay, so this will launch our pause activity, and let's see what we get. Okay, so now we've resumed. So let's go ahead and hit our pause button. Oh, we forgot to specify a drawable, so let's go ahead and do that. But it called on pause, and then when I clicked off, it called resume. So this is working on pause, on resume. So let's go ahead and add the drawable. Icon is @drawable pause. There we go. Okay, so let's try it now. So it went from on destroy, on create, on resume. Our application is now in the front. If we hit the pause button, we call on pause. And if we click OK, it doesn't do anything because we haven't hooked that up yet. If we click off, we get on resume. So by the way, the reason this looks like a dialogue that's floating over is because I set the theme to be a dialogue theme. So that's all you need to do to create a dialogue. Just create an activity that has a dialogue theme, and the background will be transparent. So let's hook the OK button up. And in our pause, in our layout for pause, we want to add an on-click handler that calls finish, and then and pause activity, we're going to go ahead and add public void finish view, just the button. And what we want to call, Alt plus Enter, what we want to call is this dot finish with no arguments. So that makes the activity go away. So, well, we have some problem here. Let's see what the problem is. Maybe we don't have a problem. Okay, so it's resumed. Oop, it works. All right, so when we click that, we pause. When we say OK, we resume. So go ahead and play with these a little bit. If I go ahead, for example, and go to recently launched and switch over to, so when I hit the recently launched, it goes from resume, pause, stop. So it's currently stopped but not destroyed. If I restart it, it goes resume again. So restart, start, resume. So that's a restart getting called. If I were to go from here to here, it's still just stopped, presumably running. And then I go back here, I get my restart, start, and resume.